Hey guys, so I'm looking at Psalm 143 and sharing some thoughts with you on that I felt the Lord has brought to my attention. Firstly, that prayer is not just about reeling off a shopping list and getting relief from whatever circumstance we're in. It's actually about getting to know God better and draw closer to him. And I think the language that David uses in verse 3 and 4 is very similar to Matthew 26, where David says, "My spirit grows faint within me, my heart is dismayed." In Matthew 26, we see that Jesus was sorrowful and troubled. His spirit agonized so much that he sweat blood. And I think it's easy to forget sometimes that Jesus was human and he understands absolutely and fully the pain and agony of this world and the cruelty that's in it. And I think it's easy to forget that and feel like we are alone, that no one can understand what we're going through, but Jesus really does, and he is always with us. And I think it's easy to sometimes lose sight of that. So something we've been doing is during lockdown, where we've all been together, is looking back and remembering things that happened ages ago, some funny, some sad. But I think it's good to look back. It's not good to stay there, but it's good to look back, because it's then you can see how far God has brought you. And sometimes in the past, even if we don't like all of what's in our past, it can teach us to appreciate the future and help us to remember that God didn't leave Daniel in the lion's den. He didn't leave Jonah in the belly of the fish. He didn't leave Jesus in the grave, and he doesn't leave us in the valley. He brings us through it. And that reminds me of one of my favourite verses, which is Deuteronomy 31:6, where it says, "Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid. For the Lord your God goes with you, and he will never leave you or forsake you." And we can really believe that, and we can trust that. There's a quote by Spurgeon that says, "Even the sterner attributes of God are upon the side of those who humbly trust and turn their trust into prayer." And David was a man who really trusted God. You can tell from this prayer he absolutely trusted him, and he looked to him to guide him and shepherd him. He understood his need for that shepherding. He knew he'd mess up. He knew he'd stray from the path. And I think that we need to understand that as well, that, you know, God knows that we're going to mess up. He understands. And it's about us being humble enough to come to him and say, "Show me where to go." Just like David did in verse 8, "Show me the way I should go." Verse 10, "Lead me on level ground." And verse 11, "Bring me out of trouble." David knew he needed God. And lastly, in verse 6, where David says, "I spread out my hands to you. I thirst for you like a parched land." Now, I don't know about you, but in the morning, I'm an absolute mess till I've had a cup of tea and a coffee. I'm no use to anybody, and I am parched. And it would be foolish of me not to quench that. So how much more then is it important that we have the living water of God refreshing us daily? So before I get out of bed, before my feet touch that floor every morning, I say, "Thank you, God, that I'm alive. Let me live this day for you. Give me the strength to do it." Because without God, we can't function in his will or plan, without his spirit in us and his guidance each day. And it's important that we remember that. And yeah, that's just what I felt God saying. Thanks guys, stay safe.